Right, everybody, as promised, we have Steve has very kindly offered to go through a game from a couple of weekends ago. So for those that weren't there, what we were very lucky enough to do is hire Daniel Gormally, the Grandmaster, for the day. And he came and played 24 of us. Boys. Just go into silent mode for me for now, all right. He was very generous and he played 24 of us simultaneously and absolutely walloped, well certainly me, and then 23 of us in total. But Steve managed to win GM Gormally, so I think that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you.
So what Steve is very kindly offered to is go through the game, what he was thinking, what Daniel was thinking, and hopefully we'll all learn a few tips. Steve, so I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Can I just say something first?
Of course you can.
I did notice how you run round to get white. You did you?
I did. I absolutely did.
So that's a plus one minute to start with.
Yeah.
I would have done so.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Yeah, nobody was more surprised than me that I actually managed to win this game. So here it is. So I did know I was going to be white. I checked with Robert beforehand, so I sort of orientated myself to play white, and I also checked out some of Danny's games online as a Grandmaster and really as any sort of player who plays FIDE rated tournaments. Their games are always available online, so you can pretty much figure out what their opening repertoire is. So I thought he would, I mean obviously he's a Grandmaster, he can play anything. But I thought, well, if he plays what he usually plays, he's going to play the Sicilian, which he did. So e4, c5. And then I decided to not go into the open lines because he would probably play a very tactical open Sicilian, which is very theoretical and which I'm not up on the book. And I don't want to study that hard either. So I decided to play a sort of a more positional, slower line, which is still very strong. So this is called the King's Indian attack against the Sicilian. So I basically close this down. Knight f3, d6. If I'd have played d4, I think he would have played the knight off, maybe the dragon. Played d3. Knight f6, g3. This is all very thematic, particularly on the white side. There's a number of ways black can play this. Knight c6, bishop g2. Then the question is, where does he put his black bishop, not the white one that just jumped out there? Is he going to put his black bishop on g6 or on e7? But before he does that, he brings his bishop out to g4, which is not a very common move, but it is played in top chess. So bishop g4. Now, if I castle here, I thought he might do queen d7. Which means I can't play h3 and kick that bishop away on g4 ever again, pretty much. So I thought I'll play h3 now to kick that bishop away and give me a few more options. Bishop goes back. That's probably not the best move. He can either take on f3 or he can go back to d7. He can also play bishop h5 as he does, but apparently the engine doesn't really like that move the most. A4, the strategy for black in this opening is to attack on the queen side, whereas white is going to attack on the king side. So usually you play A4 as white to stop B5, because what black wants to do here is play B5, A5, B4, A4, and create some sort of havoc on the queen side to counterbalance what's going to happen on the king side for white, ideally. So a4 just slows black down a little bit. e6, so he's obviously going to put that bishop on e7. This is all theory. I was surprised when I looked at this afternoon. The first 14 moves, I think it's the first 12 to 14 moves are in the master database, and they're also in the Lee Chess database as games that have been played by 2,200 and above players, which I didn't know at the time because I certainly hadn't memorized this. So a4, he played e6, I castle, he goes bishop e7, rook e1. Key part of my strategy here is the e-pawn pushing to e5, splitting the board in two. My kingside attack over there, and his queenside attack typically over here. You need rook e1 to get your b knight in place, because that knight is going to come to f1 and then jump out and attack on the king side. Castle's on the king side. That's a rather committal move, but a very typical move. Knight bd2, d5. That's a fairly typical move here. So this is almost like a bit of a closed Sicilian or a closed French. e5. Now this is a very typical move of the King's Indian attack, and for some reason the engine doesn't like this move in this position. The engine prefers taking the pawn on d5, and I still don't quite know why, to be honest. But many strong players have played e5 in this position, and that's what I did. But
it's as old as Wales, King's Indian, so that's been played a long time.
yeah, and I mean this move e5 is a very typical move in this position, but for some reason the engine doesn't like this. It's already nearly -1 to black here. Knight drops back, typical. g4. Now the reason I played g4 here is pretty much forced. My whole plan here is to go knight f1 and then to jump out to either e3 or g3 with the knight. If I went knight f1 now, he would take my knight on f3 and I'd lose the e5 pawn. So I've got to kick that bishop back. g4. Now I do knight f1 and I'm protecting the e pawn. Another reason why the rook is on e1 here. Queen c7, rather natural move. Bishop f4 is a typical move as well for me. So I'm overprotecting the e5 pawn. a6, he's trying to get that queenside attack going, but with b5 and moving those pawns down, because if I play this right, which I didn't in the early stages, I don't think, I should get a lock on the king side and be able to attack on the king side. c3 is probably not the best move. I think the best move is queen d2 here, or even h4 to get the king side attack going. c3 is not too bad, but the problem with c3 is that it leaves a hole on b3 for his knights. But I was trying to go, it's okay, it's not a blunder, it's only -0.5 here to him. That's fairly typical in this position anyway. It supports my d4. I thought it was okay, but it went a bit wrong here. b5, typical move. So at this point it's pretty level. So b5. Now at this point I should just left this pawn there and not taken it, because I actually played a takes b5, and I think the reason I played this was I didn't have enough time to think, and when he came to the board I just took the b5 pawn, but that's not a good move. I should just, because of the pawn structure. So I took there, and you notice immediately it's dropped now to -1.2. Takes here. d4, just sort of okay. b4 makes sense. You see, he's got his attack going, and mine has barely started as yet. I should have had h4 done. I should have had knight g3 or knight e3, and I should be even trying to sacrifice on the king side. If any of those pawns move, I can double up on h6 with my queen and my bishop and sacrifice, and then jump in with a knight or even two knights. But none of that's happening for me yet. Queen d2, this is a mistake, or it's at least a dubious move, because I'm very weak on c4 and b3. He can potentially fork me on b3, which is what he tried to do, knight a5. So he's coming in here to win the exchange here. So I felt like a bit of an idiot at this point, so I had to move the queen again to avoid that fork. Queen e2. So I'm nearly -2 now, so this is not really going great. but you know, he is a grandmaster after all. C4. So he's getting his attack going. Knight 3, D2. I thought this was not a good move when I looked at it after the game, and he was saying I should have got that kingside attack going, which I totally agree with. But apparently this is the engine move, is Knight 3 to D2. So, good question. It's partially defending, obviously, the B3 square and the queen side in general. It is freeing up potentially even going F4 at some later stage. So things like that. It's a fairly typical move in this opening. Right, so this looks better than it is. It's an okay move, but it's not really doing very much. So bishop D3, okay. So I've got to move my queen, big deal. The engine move here is queen F3. I played queen E3, and I had some ideas here, which paid off in the end. So, apart from thinking, well, I'm going to get massacred at any point because I shouldn't be moving this queen every move, I moved it to queen to E3 for two reasons. One is to protect the bishop on F4, and you'll see why in a moment. Because at the moment that bishop is unprotected until I move the queen on to E3. And also to apply pressure down the E file. He has got an unprotected bishop on E7, so if this opens up here, I might be able to get that bishop. Okay, so he's -2, he's winning by 2 points here, and now he blunders, and this is exactly what I hoped he was going to do. So he makes just a common move, and I sacrifice my bishop in the middle there. And this is a fairly typical thing to do, is to use a piece to sacrifice on D5. And when he takes the piece back like that, I go E6. And that bishop comes into action, and I'm attacking his knight, so I'm going to get my piece back at the very least. And I've also blasted open the center, and I can potentially get that kingside attack going. Now, having said that, usually when you sacrifice on D5 in this opening, it's with a knight that's on C3, and you take it with a knight. But it's the same thing taking with a bishop. So I'm suddenly winning now. I'm +1.5. He doesn't have to take it back. In fact, it would have been better to have taken this pawn to open the position up and then take it back. Yeah, it doesn't matter, because if the engine says take there, and then the engine says take back, don't take the rook. If I take the rook down here, he's got pawn takes knight. He's attacking my rook. He's going to come into B3 with his knight, and he's going to fork and get the exchange back, and he's going to open some things up here. So that probably gives him quite a bit of counterplay. But he didn't do that. He just took it back, as most people, I guess, would do. So I play E6, attacking his queen, forking or skewering his queen against his rook as well, and I'm going to take his knight on D7. Pretty much forced to go there. He said this was a good move. It is the engine move. E takes F7, so I didn't take the piece back. I went after checkmate. E takes F7 check. So we're starting to get a bit excited here because I've got lots of threats with queen E8 check, and taking with the pawn and queening and either checkmating him or potentially winning material. So the best move is king H8, which I sort of thought he was almost forced to play. And I probably would have done this, which would have not worked. It comes very close. If I went queen E8, rook takes, pawn takes queen, rook takes, rook takes.
What you took with the rook? first though?
Knight back is the only move. Otherwise he loses his queen. Rook takes knight. Wins the queen. Unfortunately, none of that works because he doesn't take my queen when I move it to e8. He just moves his knight back and blocks it. And he's winning at that point. So none of that would have worked anyway. But that's sort of what I was relying on, something like that. I thought that might win. So anyway, he made him... That would have been his best move, going king h8 would have been his best move, but he played what I thought at the time was a better move, and frankly I hadn't even considered this move, which is rather daft because it's a pretty obvious move. King h8, I'm now +4. At this point I made a move that I thought was good, and after the game Danny said this was good. In fact, I heard him say it like 3 times. This next move is the worst move I play in the whole game. Right? So it just shows he hadn't checked the engine. I played c takes b4. It's not a bad move, but it drops my advantage down to +2 from +4. What move should I play here? No. Pretty much win. Who said that? Exactly. Queen e6, and I didn't see this. Queen e6 wins on the spot.
It's not that easy to see them.
Right.
Not with a sword
Can you tell me why, any of you kids, can you tell me why that wins? Yeah?
Because then you get then if you take the bishop, then he can't take it back with the queen, or you win it.
So you're saying if he takes bishop takes bishop?
No, like, because he's not going to do that though, is he?
Well, if he... my bishop is loose here. He can just take my bishop. But why can't he do that? What's my next move?
Because then he can move to queen e7.
And?
And it's checkmate.
Exactly. Checkmate. So
That bishop's guarding that.
it just wins. It just wins. Queen e6. I'm going to take... He can't even move his bishop away. Right? He's got to keep on e7 because I'm checkmating on e7. Can't take the bishop, as I just said. And there's nowhere else for that bishop to go. So he's pretty much going to lose a piece here.
Push a rook up.
Well, he has to block e5, either jump in with the knight or jump in with the bishop to block my e7 square.
He loses the queen as well, if he loses the bishop, unless he moves the queen away.
He has to jump in. His move, he either goes knight e5 or bishop e5 at this point. So if he goes bishop e5...
Does not rook b6 or rook a6 work?
I don't think so. Let's just have a look. So, rook b6. Bishop. Oh, back rank. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it works then. Yeah, yeah. So he's got to keep those 2 rooks on the back rank to prevent the queen e8 ideas. Okay, so unfortunately I didn't play that. I played what Danny said was a great move. What I thought was a great move, c takes b4. Right, so I'm trying to drag his rooks, deflect his rooks off the back rank, so I've got that queen e8 idea. So I took here. Knight f6, best move. Adding additional protection to both e8 and e7. Bishop takes bishop, queen takes, rook takes knight. So I've got my piece back now, and I think I'm two or three pawns up here. And also, if I deflect his rook off the back rank, I've got maybe queen e7 or queen 8. Well, actually, probably not with that knight on f6. King takes pawn. Now, at this point, I think the move I should have played is knight f3 and try to keep the pieces on and jump into e5 and really attack. But I thought at this point I was just going to simplify and try and sort of win the ending, because I am a couple of pawns up. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook. This is the point where I should have played knight f3 as well and tried to keep the attack going. I thought I was going to just swap the queens off. Because I'm 2 pawns up, and I've sort of got an initiative here. So he sort of went for it, queen takes b4, and after g5 he resigned because he was relying on rook e8, but the problem is I've got queen c7, and that pretty much wins the game. If he comes rook e7, I just swap everything off and take his knight, and I'm a number of pawns and a piece ahead. So he resigned at this point. He said after the game he should have just taken the queen and just tried to...
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
He would have been 1.3 ahead. I would have been 1.3 ahead, so it probably lasted another 10 moves.
So did you earn your norm from that game?
I'm still working on that.
I tell you what, I enjoyed that.
I tell you, I'm never going to forget this game, but I've totally forgotten that it happened in a simul. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well done.